Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we are going to unpack a seriously fascinating ancient Indian concept, the idea of the tapasvi, or the ascetic. Now, when you hear the word ascetic, what pops into your head? Maybe you picture, someone meditating in a freezing cave in the Himalayas, completely cut off from society, maybe fasting for weeks on end. It's a pretty powerful image, right? But what if I told you that some of the most revered ancient texts fundamentally disagree with that whole picture? Today, we're going directly to the source material to decode what it actually means to be a true ascetic. And spoiler alert, it has a lot more to do with your everyday habits than running away to the woods. Okay, let's dive into this incredibly profound quote from the Mahabharata. Specifically, this is the Vana Parva, chapter 207, verse 99. It states, "Those who do not commit sins of mind, speech, and body are Mahatmas doing penance. Drying out the body is not penance." I mean, think about how revolutionary this statement is. The text explicitly calls out the practice of extreme physical deprivation, what it literally calls drying out the body, and essentially says, nope, that's not it. True penance, true spiritual discipline, it isn't about physical torture at all. It's entirely about ethical alignment across three specific dimensions: your mind, your speech, and your body. So right off the bat, we can establish a really clear contrast between popular perception and actual ancient wisdom. The myth is all about torturing and starving the body in total isolation. But the reality, it's about cleansing your everyday actions of the mind, speech, and body. The ancient texts are telling us that a true tapasvi is deeply engaged in the real world. They're actively managing how they think, how they speak to people, and how they physically act in society. It completely flips asceticism from this extreme, out-of-reach lifestyle into a highly practical, everyday ethical framework. Here is our roadmap for today. Number 1, the myth of the ascetic. Number 2, sins of the mind. Number 3, sins of speech. Number 4, sins of the body. And finally, number 5, the everyday ascetic. Let's start with section 1, the myth of the ascetic, rethinking penance. To really guide us through this, the ancient text known as the Manu Smriti provides a highly specific number, 10. According to chapter 12 of the Manu Smriti, there are exactly 10 specific sins or missteps that you've got to actively avoid to be considered a true ascetic. It's not some vague philosophical ideal. It is a precise 10-point checklist for ethical living. And this brilliantly illustrates how those 10 sins are divided up. The text uses this beautiful rule of 3 framework. It allocates 3 sins to the mind, 3 sins to the body, and 4 sins to speech. It's incredibly balanced. You might notice how speech actually gets the largest slice of the pie here with 4 specific rules. We'll get into exactly why that is in just a moment, but first we need to start where everything begins, internally. Section 2, Sins of the Mind, the internal battle. So the Manu Smriti outlines 3 specific mental sins. The first is coveting others' wealth unjustly. And hey, this isn't just about literal stealing. It's that internal burning desire to take what isn't yours. The second is wishing harm or destruction upon others. I mean, how often do we get cut off in traffic and internally just wish for the other driver to crash? Even if we don't act on it, the text identifies that malicious thought itself as a spiritual failure. And then there's the third mental sin, which is absolutely fascinating. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is this third mental sin. The text describes it as the resolute belief that concepts like consequences, karma, or the spiritual world are nothing but a hoax. The source text actually uses the term the kosala. In modern terms, we'd probably call this absolute cynicism or nihilism. Ancient philosophy viewed the internal belief that nothing matters and there are no consequences as an active sin of the mind. Why? Well, because absolute cynicism destroys the whole foundation for ethical behavior. If you believe everything is a hoax, you basically have no internal compass to guide your actions or your speech. Moving right along to section 3, sins of speech, the power of words. Here are the 4 vocal sins you absolutely must avoid to be a true ascetic. First, harsh words. Speaking to others with unnecessary cruelty or roughness. Second, lying or false speech. Third, backbiting or chigalkhori, which is gossiping behind someone's back to sow discord. And fourth, useless chatter. Now, while lying and harsh words are pretty obvious ethical breaches, I really want to draw your attention to that last one, because it might literally be the most relevant to our lives today. Useless chatter, the ancient trap of purposeless talk. The text identifies purposeless or fruitless speaking as a direct sin against your own spiritual discipline. Think about how perfectly this maps onto our modern daily routines. I mean, how much of our day is consumed by endless digital scrolling, leaving pointless comments, or just engaging in hollow gossip at the water cooler? The ancient sages recognized way back then that our energy and our attention are finite resources. Wasting them on useless chatter isn't just unproductive, it actively prevents you from being a disciplined, focused tapasvi.
Next up, Section 4, Sins of the Body, Physical Actions.
The 3 physical sins are pretty straightforward, but they're absolutely crucial. First, taking others' wealth unjustly, so the physical act of theft or extortion. Second, unauthorized violence. Notice the nuance there, right? It acknowledges that sometimes force is authorized or necessary, like in self-defense, but unlawful or unprovoked violence is a sin. And third, adultery, which is described as going to others' partners. What really ties these 3 physical sins together is the violation of boundaries. Physical discipline, according to this ancient wisdom, is simply about respecting the physical and emotional boundaries of the people around you.
And that brings us to Section 5, the everyday ascetic, putting it together.
So the crucial point is this final definition, perfectly summarized from the source material. A true tapasvi, a true ascetic, is simply anyone who successfully protects themselves from these 10 specific sins. You don't need to change your clothes, you don't need to move to a mountaintop, and you certainly do not need to starve yourself. If you're sitting in a modern office building, driving your car, or just eating dinner with your family, and you are actively protecting your mind from malice, your tongue from useless chatter, and your body from crossing ethical boundaries, well, congratulations, you are doing the hard work of an ascetic. I want to leave you with this final thought. Look back over your own life. Out of those 10 sins, whether it's the internal cynicism, the backbiting, the useless chatter, or the coveting, which is the absolute hardest for you to avoid today? The ancient texts challenge us to look in the mirror rather than looking for a cave to hide in. So the real question is, are you ready to take on the challenge of being a modern tapasvi? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this completely changed how you view discipline and ancient wisdom. Until next time, keep learning and keep reflecting.